Hey, welcome back. How are you? It's a terrific Tuesday edition of Liquid Lunch. It's hour number 2. We're breezing along. Martha Bonetta and Jeff Webb joined us from the border. They're going to report back to us about the conditions down there at the border. And as we talked about often in hour 1, Joe Imperatrice joined us, sergeant in the New York Police Department and founder of Blue Lives Matter, an organization that goes out and advocates for the support of our police officers. And continuing that theme, Frank, we were talking about de Blasio and how I believe it's his leadership that's allowing people to think it's okay to disrespect cops. And, you know, Joe's doing God's work out there, trying to at least keep people up to date on why we need to respect police officers. Yeah, well, I don't, respectfully, I disagree. I don't think it's limited to de Blasio. I mean, that wouldn't explain why in Philadelphia they're throwing rocks at police officers, why they're shooting them in the middle of a routine narcotics bust. I think this is not limited to one city or one politician. And I think you see a lot of folks around the country who feel much more emboldened to express their distaste for members of law enforcement, even if that means being violent. Right. Well, you know, I got to disagree with you. All right. Because New York is the capital of the world. The NYPD is known as the #1 police force in the world. And when people around the country say, hey, look, they're getting away with dumping buckets of water on the heads of the NYPD. They're the baddest mothers around, and nothing's happening to them. I think it trickles down to people around the country thinking, hey, if you can abuse the New York City Police Department, then, you know, we can certainly, you know, throw Chinese food at our local deputy here. You know, there's a domino effect. Perhaps you're right. You know, speaking of New York being the capital of the world, the governor of the Empire State, Andrew Cuomo, did a radio interview with WAMC's Alan Chartock in which he weighed in on Fredo Gate. Now, if you haven't been following this, we've been talking about this incredible story where Chris Cuomo flew into this mad rage, profanity-laced tirade where he compared being called Fredo, who's a character from The Godfather, to actually being called the N-word. Well, of all people that weighed in on this controversy, a former guest on our former weekend show, What's the Deal? Johnny Russo, who of course played Carlo in The Godfather, he said this, of course, is ridiculous.
I can't believe that he would say that. First of all, I know the whole family. I knew his father would smack him. Really? I know his mother. I was just with his mother recently.
His father would be ashamed of him even saying that?
Of course. I mean, why would? I mean, I don't understand why. First of all, it's a classic film.
Yeah, of course.
You're talking about a character that was weak.
Yeah, and
it's a sad state of affairs when the guy that played Carlo in The Godfather has a better handle on the news than a guy that's an anchor of a primetime news show.
Yeah, and you know, Gianni Russo's a famous Italian. He was also Fredo's brother-in-law,
right? Carlo.
Which he has some quite unique insights because he was married to Fredo's sister, who happened to be Rocky Balboa's wife in another life. So, I mean, if anybody's right in the middle of this stuff, it's Gianni Russo. We should get him back on here and get a real Italian who is in the mafia Godfather movies to weigh in on if Fredo means anything racial. It's ridiculous.
I got to tell you, this righteous indignation that Governor Cuomo expressed in this radio interview, that somehow The Godfather is an anti-Italian film. I don't view it that way at all. And I think Governor Cuomo ought to join his brother in terms of getting a clue. But speaking of clues, John, we did get a hint about President Trump's plans for Greenland yesterday.
Yep.
Because the president tweeted exactly what he wouldn't do to Greenland. Have a look at this. So, as you can see,
we're not going to have a big, shining, golden building with the name Trump on it.
Exactly. So I'm glad the president is taking this in good humor, certainly much more so than the Danish prime minister seems to be. I tell you, the more that we take a look at this, I think the more it makes sense for us to acquire Greenland. I wouldn't mind giving up Puerto Rico and Guam, if need be, in order to get Greenland and maybe a territory to be named later.
This is starting to get like a game of Risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
trade you Jeffrey Epstein's U.S. Virgin Island and Guam for Greenland.
Yes.
There's only 50,000 people in Greenland,
Yeah.
and you know, people are saying, well, it may be billions or trillions, but supposedly there's a boatload of minerals and resources there.
Well,
that,
and it's strategically located in a very important place,
Right.
sort of a bridge to
well,
the
we
world.
do have one of our northernmost stations up there in Greenland, so we are kind of tapped into the country.
That's
or
right.
the land mass masquerading as a country. Or is Greenland a country, or is it a province?
It's an
or-
autonomous territory, so it's technically under the protection of the Danish crown, but they are autonomous. They're pretty
Could you
independent.
imagine? We're talking about public safety and stuff.
Excuse me.
Could you imagine if you lived in a country that was under the protection of a Danish?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, we're going to send down the croissants and
Right.
Danishes to protect you guys
I'll
from
take
the
the-
invading forces.
I'll take the crullers any day of the week.
I like the jelly sticks myself, you know.
But the other controversy that's gotten a lot of attention these days, John, or yesterday anyway, is Planned Parenthood, who we've been talking about for quite some time. They are formally rejecting federal funds. I think it's Title IX funds.
Excellent.
And we are, they're rejecting it because they don't want to adhere to the federal government's restrictions on abortion.
Yeah.
I say good for them. If you don't want to adhere to the government's restrictions,
Fantastic.
do it.
Don't take the money. And
Exactly.
look, on Liquid Lunch, we don't come down Republican, Democrat. We come down on the practical side of things. We talk to the purple people who can have varied opinions. You can have some reds and some blues that makes you purple. I've said many times the government should stay out of women's wombs. But in this instance, you know, if the government has some guidelines that say, hey, if you want our money, you need to do this, then, you know, that's Planned Parenthood's decision.
And I don't think Planned Parenthood is going to be having any difficulty raising money from the private sector.
Yeah, and, you know, just speaking of Planned Parenthood, I'm sure they're doing great work. I'm sure there's women that need gynecological and other services, and Planned Parenthood's there, and they have a host of programs that I'm sure are needed by women. But, you know, on the other side of things, we have some of our legislators spending so much time fighting for Planned Parenthood to give women the right to an abortion. And at the same exact time, they're fighting to give illegal immigrants a whole host of rights here in America. So, shouldn't our legislators be fighting for American babies that may be born just as much as they are for illegal immigrants who have no stake in our country?
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of a false equivalency.
I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to lure you into saying what I want you to say.
Look, I think every American legislator's first duty should be to, shockingly, Americans, people that are either born here or have become naturalized citizens. I don't understand where this notion came from that your first allegiance and your first priority should be, you know, to people that are breaking into the country.
Yeah.
To me, it makes no sense. One last story, John, that I want to get your take on before we get to Cliff Maloney, has to do with another women's story, and that's Heidi Klum. Heidi Klum, famous model, 46 years old, and she is getting a lot of criticism for going on Instagram and posting a topless photo. They're saying that this reeks of a midlife crisis, and she's getting a lot of pushback from this. I think this is completely unwarranted. If a supermodel like Heidi Klum wants to go on television and post a topless photo or go on Instagram, well, why do people care?
Can I see it? Do you have it over
Yeah,
there?
I mean,
is that it's a rear shot?
yeah.
But she's topless.
She
You
is, yeah.
don't see the front.
Yeah, well, so people are posting good role model for their children, not why is she half naked in every other picture? I mean, that's been Heidi Klum's career her whole life. I say good for her that she still looks that good at 46.
She has a bathing suit on, and
Yeah.
she has a back to the camera. I mean, grow up already. And
Yeah.
Heidi, show
So
us
you're
the
with me
front.
on that.
I mean, I could see if she was topless facing the camera, I could see, you know, not being a great thing to teach your kids. But her back to the camera, she's a model. There's probably some haute couture in, the pose she's in.
I don't
or
think
something.
there's anything wrong.
There's nothing? No, I don't see anything.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem there. And what about Jon Voight? We had his daughter.
Yeah, I was
non-daughter
hoping,
on
he
yesterday.
released this video yesterday. I was hoping we could get his daughter, Jade, who works for us this week, who you might remember for her role in the film Echo Teens Save the World, or in Touched by Grace. I was hoping we could get her to comment on it. But Jon Voight was clearly very enthusiastic in his support of the president. This is what Jon Voight had to say.
I've said this many times, and I'm saying it again. From the deep truths of my heart and soul, President Trump is a man of truths, love, and justice for the American people, and also for the people of a sacred place, Israel. Not only does he love our country, the United States of America, but he has a love for the people of all nations. Let us pray for peace. Let us pray for this country.
Even China.
Let us pray. And I love the way he lifted that line from the Justice League. Truth, justice, and the American way. That's what we're going to be talking about right after this break. Truth, justice, the American way, liberty. Liquid Lunch back at you in 2 minutes.